Hello, this is Kim Ki-hyun from Richgo. Today, I would like to discuss the real estate market using transaction trends and the transaction volume data released by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. To understand the flow of the market, it is very important to look at supply and demand. And this supply and demand is reflected in the competition between selling and buying, which results in transaction volume. Therefore, it is crucial to determine whether transaction volume is increasing or decreasing. An increase in transaction volume means that buying activity is rising, indicating that market energy is becoming very strong. Conversely, a decrease in transaction volume means that the number of people wanting to buy is declining, leading to a reduction in market transactions. So, the energy of the market is decreasing. We will examine how this market energy changes through transaction trend data nationwide, and then we will look at actual transaction data, primarily focusing on the metropolitan area. What surprised me when looking at the actual transaction data is the transaction volume of apartments in Seoul. It has decreased by more than half from August to September. It has dropped by more than half. I will provide more details later. I will tell you. First, I will discuss the transaction trend data. This is the transaction trend data, with the x-axis representing sales transactions and the y-axis representing lease transactions. So we can see how sales transactions and lease transactions are moving, how they have changed compared to the previous week, whether they are increasing or decreasing. If you look, the most noticeable one is Sejong. Sejong has risen significantly. What does it mean that it has risen significantly? It means that lease transactions have increased greatly. Now look here. Wow, Sejong has really seen a lot of lease transactions, but on the contrary, sales transactions have decreased significantly. So sales transactions have decreased a lot, which ultimately means that they have shifted to leases. This is because the demand for real estate is clearly defined: buying, leasing, or renting. There are only three options. And if people don't want to buy, the demand will naturally shift to leases or rentals. So, in the case of Sejong, lease transactions have increased significantly for the first time in about 10 months since this time in 2023. However, sales transactions have completely shrunk. Sejong is a region that could improve in the future, but it seems it won't be easy for the time being. Perhaps as the supply prices in the neighboring Daejeon decrease, there will be some price advantages, likely around next fall or the end of next year, but it could be delayed a bit longer. For now, it doesn't seem to be a good time to secure a home. Next, Gangwon province has also dropped significantly. The fact that it has dropped a lot means that lease transactions have decreased sharply. Compared to the previous week, sales transactions have also slightly decreased. Next, Ulsan has also moved significantly downwards to the left. Both sales transactions and lease transactions are currently decreasing. In other words, the energy of the market is also decreasing in Ulsan. The same goes for Jeju, Daegu, Gyeongbuk, and Jeonbuk, where most areas are either moving downwards or to the left, resulting in a significant decrease in overall transaction volume. Now, let's take a look at Seoul. Now, if you look at Seoul, the sales transactions were at 47.4 at their peak, but now they are at 12.6. This is more than a halving. It has decreased significantly. So, looking at this, with 47 and 10, it's almost a quarter of the transactions that have decreased significantly. So the transactions have really decreased a lot now. And to see how much these transactions have decreased, let's take a long look at the data. Now, can you see? When transactions in Seoul were this high, the transaction supply exceeded 40, but now the average has dropped below 14.5. Indicating a very sluggish situation. So if you look here, the red line is almost touching the bottom. At times like this, the market's energy is very weak. So if you look back, even in 2008 and 2009, there was a slight rise in red, but then it dropped again. This is a market with weak energy, and it seems that since 2021, Seoul has been in a significantly weak market in terms of transaction. Now, we will look at Incheon. The supply in Incheon is still somewhat okay, but transactions, whether sales or rentals, are also showing a slight decrease. In the case of Gyeonggi province, transactions for sales and rentals are all decreasing. So, currently, transactions have significantly decreased. The impact of the stress DSR second regulation is clearly evident in the current transaction volume data and when the third phase is implemented. In July 2025, I believe the market's energy will likely weaken even further. Now, we at Richgo are actually compiling real transaction prices every day. We have created a system based on this, and I will explain it a bit. For your reference, as you can see here, it reflects the real transaction prices compiled up to October 27, 2024. And this is based on the transaction contract date. The Korea Real Estate Agency, on the other hand, is based on the reporting date. That's why there is a slight difference. It is based on the contract date. And as you can see, after February 20th, 2020, the right to cancel contracts has been excluded. You can refer to the fact that the right to cancel contracts has been completely excluded. The market peaked in October 2021, and a significant turning point in the market began in 2021 and 2022. As you can see, each of these is the actual transaction. Each point is an actual transaction. As you can see, there have been a lot of recent reported prices. On July 22nd, 2024, Hanam-dong, 9-1 Hanam recorded a historic high reported price of 22 billion won. Then, on August 5th, Akro, River Park also, recorded a reported price of 8 billion won. The red line represents the average transaction amount. When this average transaction amount is low, in February 2024, and recently, in January 2024, although this is slightly different from the actual transaction price index, it is similar. As you can see, this was the bottom, and after rising, it fell again after August last year, hitting the bottom in January 2024, then rising again. This year, when was the peak? In June, the average price of actually traded apartments reached the highest point. After hitting this peak, prices have been continuously falling in July and August and have dropped significantly entering September. As you can see, the reported prices are gradually decreasing. However, despite this, some apartment complexes are still recording high prices. But when we express all apartments in Seoul as individual points, what does it look like? If you look closely, there were indeed many reported high prices at this time. In August, the reported high was 8.5 billion won, and in September, I will correct the expression regarding the highest reported price. Therefore, the highest transaction price in September was 7.9 billion won. It continues to fall. And for October, although not all data has been compiled yet, it has dropped to 6.78 billion won. As you can see, the data is still not fully compiled. However, as of the end of October, most of the data has been compiled based on the contract date. By October 27th, the data up to September 27th would have been fully compiled. So you can consider that almost all days are included. Looking at the transaction volume, in June, Seoul had 6,766 cases. And then, in July, there were 7,117 cases. And in August, it recorded 5,560 cases. However, suddenly in September, it is now less than 2,400 cases. If a few more days pass, it might reach around 2,500 or 2,600 cases. But still, in August, there were 5,560 cases. And half of that would be just under 2,800 cases. It's around 802, just under 1,800 cases, about 2,701 cases. However, in September, transactions have completely plummeted, dropping more than half. A reduction of transaction volume below half is almost a crash. Such a significant drop in transactions within a month has not happened recently. What does that mean? It is clear that this decrease in transactions in September had a definite impact. There were factors that influenced it. What is that exactly? It's the stress from loan regulations known as DSR. Therefore, it has been confirmed by data that the trading volume in September has definitely decreased due to stress DSR. This time, I will also show you data on John's transactions. If you look at the bar graph, John's transactions peaked in February and March of 2023, then dropped, briefly rose, and started to decline again from around April this year. Now you can see that almost all transactions for September 2024 have been tallied. However, the John's transaction in Seoul have now reached the lowest point since January 2022. Should I extend the time frame? Let's look at it from 2020. The number of John's transactions has really decreased. If you look at this, September now has about 6,187 cases. This level is similar to September 2021 and September 2020, where transactions were also very low. That's right. So, September 2020 is exactly 4 years ago, which is September 2024. That's right. So, looking at September, excluding the recent data, the transaction volume in September 2020 and September 2021 was quite low. Now, in September 2024, John's transactions have also decreased up until 2023 and 2024. John's transactions had significantly increased, but recently there has been a substantial decline. So keep in mind that not only sales, transactions, but also John's transactions are decreasing. Additionally, in the fourth quarter of 2024, there will be a significant temporary increase in supply in Seoul. And looking at the data from Richgo regarding new sales, there are many applications planned for the fourth quarter of this year. Look here, there are so many. And let's check Gangbook as well. It's definitely less than Gangnam, but still noticeable. It is definitely less than Gangnam. However, there are quite a few applications planned. So if the supply increases and the number of applications also rises in the fourth quarter of this year, I think the market stability will gradually improve. In this way, we have examined the supply and demand of the real estate market, as well as the transaction trends and the transaction data that aggregates actual transaction prices. Therefore, the energy of the market is clearly being affected by loan regulations, as confirmed by the data. However, the problem is that the third phase is scheduled to be implemented starting in July next year. If the stress DSR is enforced in July next year, it will likely become more difficult to secure loans. Consequently, there is a possibility that demand will decrease further. So, please keep in mind that the real estate market is entering a situation where it will become increasingly difficult to inject liquidity through loans. It would be good to consider this when making decisions regarding real estate. Thank you.